I talk a lot about fine margins in comps and how big a difference it makes. And it doesn't matter whether it's missing a fish with a landing net because you've not got it rigged right, missing a fish on the nymph because you're not concentrating on that one drift, as well as all the other drifts you've made, or any one of 100 other things that could go wrong. It can mean the difference between being first, second, third, fourth. It is fine margins, and that's why a lot of times, especially when I'm out training with the lads, I get wound up about sloppy stuff. And I still make plenty of mistakes. God, I'm far from perfect, but it is fine margins. It's a week before we go. I wouldn't say I'm excited. I'm panicking because I've got so much to do. You can be the best angler in the country, and if you don't practice the right things in the right way, you'll come nowhere. One of the issues I see, and people might disagree with it, I see a lot of really, really good anglers who, when I watch them fish, are just missing that much to make them world class. And the little things which are, are really, really small, which people can say, oh, that doesn't make any difference. Well, I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way, that a lot of those little things, I call them giveaways. If you give things away easily, a lot of these other countries will be quite willing to just take them off you. And that's things like, lost fish because you haven't got your net set up right, or poor back end line control because, every 10 casts, you'll fish a cast or two with your left hand off the line. They're just little things. Sometimes I think people think I'm mental when I start saying, every cast you have to captivate the line over your backhand. Don't let the line slip from under your finger. Don't fish like this. Don't fish with your hand in your pocket. All of these things all add up. And, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of very, very good anglers who either for want of just understanding that, or sometimes just a little bit of laziness, to be honest, don't work on it, and they haven't achieved the full potential. It's just... So prep, I think, and practice in the right way is really, really important. So I think the beats in France are going to be anything up to, and maybe even slightly over 350 metres for 2 hours. So that's a lot of water for 2 hours fishing. So I always do this kind of thing before I go anywhere. It really just keeps you honest and helps you with your timing through the beat and reading water and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peg about 350 to 400 metres of river. Obviously I know this particular bit of river, so it's not 100% authentic. And I know that it's not got massive numbers of fish in it, which is probably what France is going to be like. So all this is really going to do is force me a little bit to monitor my time effectively and fish hopefully very, very cleanly to try and get to a good score for this amount of water in 2 hours. So I'll stick a peg in. It's the thing a lot of people don't get about fishing pegs. You can't do everything in the time you've got. And once that clock starts running in a comp, it doesn't stop. There's no, oh, I'm going to have a break because I've got a tangle. Doesn't work like that. So 2 hours of actual fishing is not that long. So I mean, when it comes down to choosing methods, the bottom line is, I mean, it's been said actually quite recently in social media, a few people having pops at competition fishing, world championships, saying it's just all about Euronymphing. I mean, that comes basically from a position of absolutely zero experience, unfortunately, because you have to be able to do absolutely everything. If you can't dry fly fish to an extremely high level, fish dry dropper, fish wet flies, streamer fish, nymph fish, sight fish, actual single nymph sight fishing, it all plays a part at sometimes. You have to be extremely polished at all aspects. You have to be a very high level caster, because sometimes we're fishing in atrocious conditions. You've really got to be able to have the full gamut of stuff at your disposal. And one of the big things that a lot of people don't get is when you turn up at a section of water that you've never seen before, you have got limited time to work it out. You've got to decide what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, how you're going to approach it, how you're going to maximise the beat, how you're going to get your fish backwards and forwards to the controller without spooking the other fish, you know, how you can access it. You've got all of that to work out. Under the rules, the minimum time they're allowed to give you is 30 minutes. So that could be 30 minutes to review 300 metres of water, set 4 or 5 fly rods up and come up with a plan. You know, it's not very much time at all. What I'm going to do, I mean, we've got a lot of wind, so the conditions aren't great, to be honest, not for, particularly for contact nymphing or using like a Euro nymph setup. So what I've done, I have set 2 rods up. I've set a straight dry fly rod up just in case we get any rising fish or there's any good water for a bit of blind dry fly fishing. And I have set up, at the minute, 2 nymphs on a very thin Euro-style leader. I've set up also a dry dropper rig in case I need to anchor to the surface with the dry dropper because of the wind. I'll try and avoid that because there's very little fly life about, and I'd rather hedge my bets with 2 nymphs than go in a dry and a single nymph, but if I have to, I will. And my rough plan is, I've set my watch, I've got 2 hours on the watch, which is going to be a section length in France. Looking at it, because the middle of the beat is still in a lot of shade and very dark, those fish might not be massively active. I've taken the water temperature, it's all right. It's around about the point the fish should be active and feeding. But I am going to concentrate my efforts on the bottom and the top of the beat. So I'm going to put an hour into the bottom and an hour into the top. And my very rough goal in my head is going to be 5 fish an hour for 10 for 2 hours, which on this river would be a good score. It's not the easiest of rivers to fish, although there's quite a lot of fish in it, and not always a pushover to catch. So that's what I'm going to go for. If I can get more than 10, I'll take them. Right, so what I'm doing, I've started right down at the bottom here. We research, or I research as the captain anyway, a lot of the venues, and the lads do look as well for any information we can get, videos, anything like that. There's nothing beats going, right? And a lot of the top countries and the top teams will go to the venues the year before to practice the actual venues that are going to be used in the competition. Unfortunately, as we struggle for sponsorship, we can't really afford to do that the year before. So we have to rely a lot on what we can learn, what we learn from the guides that we employ for when we're over there, and if there's anybody in the team with past experience. I have a picture now of what the fishing could potentially be like, but there's still a lot to be worked out in a very short period when we're over in France, and we'll be there with relatively limited practice areas probably, because a lot of the fishing gets closed down immediately before the event, and you've got a lot of fishermen, you know, pressed into quite small practice areas. Right, so I just fished through that little bit. I've burned 15 minutes in there. I had 4 chances and I put 2 in the net, which is not a good conversion rate. 50% is not great. The 2 I lost were slightly bigger. The 2 I got were just probably right on the 20 centimetre limit. So what I'm going to do now is I'll step my watch off again after we finish talking, and I'm going to bolt and I'm going to go up towards the top and fish the open water up above this heavy treed bit, because I think it'll be a little bit more sheltered up there, and hopefully we can put a few more on. But we have got quite a hill to climb. I need another probably 8 fish is what I sort of estimated, so we'll shoot up the top and give that a go. Yeah, I mean, having everything efficient, you know, having your gear rigged up efficiently is a big deal. When it comes down to fine margins, it's a massive thing, you know, being able to reduce the number of tangles you get, being able to, I mean, one of the big ones is, I even see it now, even with really good anglers, the way they set the landing net up is just insane to me. You know, sometimes I've seen really good fishermen of a good level, you know, have got the landing net wrapped in the wading belt and they've got to untangle it to net a fish. You know, if you watch any of the top countries, you know, when they play a fish, you know, the net comes off, the fish is netted, before you can even see what's really happened, it's all just slick. And that's what I try and emulate with my own setup, and I'm always fiddling about with gear, trying to get it a little bit more user-friendly, if you like, cut down on tangles, even down to the kind of landing net you use, the mesh. You know, a lot of the time now, provided it's not, you know, really high volume water flow, we use a micro mesh pan. The reason being, bead-headed flies don't fall through the mesh, so it cuts down the number of times that you end up, when you've netted a fish, with the flies tangled in the mesh. That over 4 hours of fishing could equate to 1 or 2 or 3 more fish. You know, when I take it back to 2019, when I won with I think it was a 3 or a 4 fish margin over 5 days. You know, you need to take those gimmies. You cannot give that kind of stuff away. So really, we're in the last hour now, and it's not really gone according to plan. I wanted sort of like 5 fish by about halfway, and I've had 2, lost 2, and had 1 other rattle. So it's really not been great. I should have had 5. I've had 5 chances, so it's, you know, not good. I'm not happy with it really. So what I've done, I've put all my eggs in one basket now, and I've come to the top of where my beat is. I've got some good water. The wind is still blowing, but it's a little bit easier than it was up here. And what I've done, I've made a major rigging change really. I've dropped down to 0.10 diameter tippet, so I've gone down 2 clicks in tippet diameter. I was on 12, which was probably a little bit heavy with hindsight for down there. And I've gone to a single fly. So what that's going to do is, a lot of people think more flies, more chance of catching fish and all that. That's not always true. 1 fly will drift better, and you can get better contact to 1 fly than you can 2. So I'm going to fish this now. I'm going to put an hour into this top bit, and I'm going to fish it really thoroughly to try and get myself to 10 fish, which is a bit of an uphill struggle because I need another 8. So we'll give it a go, and we'll see what happens. So I've done my 2 hours, and to be honest, it has gone nowhere near like I hoped it would do or expected it to do. I think I've had about 6, maybe 7 contacts off fish. I think I've put 3 in the net that were about measurable, around the low 20s. They weren't particularly big, and I've lost at least 3. Lost 2 playing them, and 1 that rattled off after a few seconds. It was another better fish. Really, would I have done anything differently? Probably with hindsight, I might have spent a little bit more time in the middle of the beat. I sort of put my eggs into one basket to some degree by thinking I was going to really target either end of the beat where there was a bit of sun on the water, it was a little bit warmer, rather than in under all that cover where it was cool. And it's really not worked. That beat is definitely worth more than what I've put on the Curdy effectively, which is like 3 fish, I think. It's done now. There's nothing I can do about it except maybe learn a little bit more from it. But what I am going to do now is have a break, have something to eat, and then I'll do it all over again. I'll do another 2-hour peg session on a different bit of water. I'll go through the same process and see how that goes. Lucy threatened to divorce me about 3 weeks ago because I was living in the loft. So the fly tying has been, we've come to a compromise because that's what marriage is all about. And I've set up my fly tying stuff in the living room, which she hates. So she can sit on the couch and watch the telly, and I can sit at the dining table tying flies, pretending I'm watching the television. I've been up most mornings at 5:30, 6 o'clock tying flies, and I've tied most nights until 11, 12 at night. A lot of the patterns that I'm tying are basic, bog standard stuff, in all honesty. Things that tend to work everywhere in the world, like pheasant tails, fairly simple perdigons. I know that pheasant tails work well in France. I mean, I've fished there before. It's one of those flies that works anywhere. And I know it's a fly that the French use a lot to great effect all over the world. A lot of top teams do. So I've just been tying some bog standard, very simple pheasant tails without too much fluff. Exact pattern's really not that important a lot of the time, you know. The main thing is a lot of these flies are very simple. This is no exception. It's just a 2mm silver beaded pheasant tail with a Hereford dubbed thorax. It's actually that fully milled Uronymph dub stuff, which is nice. I have been tying quite a lot recently. This is a stock box for going over with. There's a lot of basic stuff. Simple pheasant tails, simple perdigons, some parachutes, some CDC duns, some heavier. I hate to say I've got slightly better at preparing, because I don't think I have actually. What I have got better at is discounting stuff. So in the early days when I used to literally try to take everything with me. You know, everything. You know, so I would get there and I would have, you know, 5 shades of pink marabou with me, 20 different shades of floss and all this kind of, and just everything, all my fly tines. I'd try and take my entire fishing life with me for a world, and you can't do that. So I have got better and more sort of regimented at saying, right, I need this, I don't need that. So I do get a little bit, my stuff is a little bit more focused than it used to be. So at least in that respect, my prep has improved slightly over the last 20 years. Really, the amount of stuff you take is a bit disproportionate really. I'll have about 14 fly rods with me for the Worlds, and it's a little more than normal because we've got lakes and rivers mixed together obviously. And because we're fishing off the bank, for the lakes, although the relatively small wild fish, which you'll probably need like a 5 or a 6 weight kind of rod, I will take a couple of heavier ones as well, just in case the weather throws into that, like inclement weather. But usually what I'll do is all my main rods, the rods I'm going to use the most of, like my dry fly rod for the river, my main nymphing rod for the river, I'll have at least 2 of every model. Obviously I might want more than one set up, but also I might blow one up. And then I'll have a few extra ones of differing lengths and weights for situations like if one of the beats or one of the rivers is a little bit more enclosed, if it's a little bit bigger and I can use my 11 footer versus a 10.5 footer. You don't really need to go to that granular detail, but you know, I like to make sure, because I'm fortunate, I work in the tackle industry as well, I've got a lot of rods at my disposal. So I'll take about 14 rods. And to be honest, a lot of the times I actually fish with prototypes. These particular rods I'm using this year, and I have been using for about 6 months and I've been practicing, aren't on the market yet. They will be at the end of next year. These are the new nymphing rods that we've been doing. The big thing with these, they come with 2 tips. One of the tips is a solid carbon fibre tip, which is super sensitive, but it loads under its own weight. So they're really, really useful for flipping really light beads around when you're Euro nymphing or you're fishing the dry dropper. So they load a lot easier. And I've been using these for about 6 months, and they're really durable as well, as you can see. And they've been great for fishing light beads, which I think a lot of it will be in France. They've been ideal. So I do a lot of my comp fishing with prototype stuff. It's a good way to test it, helps with developing it. The problem comes in getting it all into relatively small tubes. Yeah, so departure day is Friday. We've got a 5:55 AM flight, I think, from Manchester. So we'll all meet in the airport, probably about 3:30 or something like that. Get checked in, argue with the check-in staff about the overweight baggage that we've got. Probably that happens every year. Got about a 2-hour drive, and then from then on in, it's it's just a chain of, what have we got, 7 or 8 days of practice, split between rivers and lakes, and then we've got a couple of down days where effectively the official part of the competition starts before we get into 5 days of straight competition. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people say when I come back, did you have a nice holiday? It's definitely not a holiday. It's a hard slog for 2 and a bit weeks, and hopefully with something at the end of it. Come here. Oh my God, that was terrible.
We're thinking leader-wise, first session, you guys going to go with 1-4 or 1-6 for that first one?
1-4. No, just fish 1-4.
It's going to be the 1-4.
Stick to what
Just fish 1-4, because I've practiced with 1-4. I'll try and go through the whole thing with it.
1-4.
1-4. We've got the opening ceremony coming up this afternoon. So all this is just last minute prep really. We've got quite a lot of prep to do. We've got time tomorrow as well, so that'll give us a little bit longer to get stuff ready. But we've been all over. I don't know, I wouldn't even like to think how many kilometres we've driven. It's been quite a lot.
Not twice.
Every day, 4 hours of driving probably, something like that.
Yeah.
Chris drove for about 11 minutes and hit the curb 3 times.
Twice. 2 times.
Twice.
Buffeted, it was like bumper cars.
Yeah, so I mean the practice was, like it is a lot of the time, it was quite challenging. Really, the lack of practice water was probably the main issue. The organisers had closed down obviously the 3 competition rivers, but they'd also closed down 3 very similar rivers as reserve venues in case of natural disaster, which effectively took 6 of the main rivers in the area completely out. So we ended up practicing, certainly on the rivers, we practiced at higher altitude for a lot of the days than we were going to fish in the match, or we fished way below the competition sectors, which is just really not representative. We caught fish, and we caught quite a lot of times, but it was really more the fact that you know you go all that way, and it is frustrating when you can't get on similar water, but that happens a lot. On the lakes, the practice was good. I thought we had you know, some reasonably similar lake practice, some of it more than others, and we caught fish on the lakes. It was tough up there in the practice water because there was a lot of fishermen going up there obviously to practice. But yeah, the practice went okay.
You haven't thrown that one in.
So these are some of the notes that we scribbled down, and some of it's stuff that we've learned, some of it's just like a rough plan. So for Sector 1, which is I think pronounced the Vicdios or the Vicashores, I'm not really sure. Browns only, and then we've got like the session times and the lengths because they are different. So there's 2 times 2 hours, 2 times 350 metres. So that basically reminds you that you've got 700 metres of water to cover in 4 hours, which is a lot. And it might be the hardest venue. We've heard that it can be on and off, it could be low numbers, and if it is low numbers, so if you've only got a handful, it's not a disaster. But it could be 20 equally, so it's just to like put things in perspective. Some methods which are probably going to be appropriate, and then just a little bit of general how to approach it. They're not instructions, they're not like go and do this, it's more of this might be a plan that works, but you've got to obviously modify that sometimes. And for that one, because it's potentially harder, it's to fish at a slower pace and fish carefully. Even though it's a long beat, is to find the good stuff or find the good looking water by fishing reasonably quickly, or looking at your beat previously if you've got enough time, and then to spend more time in the good looking stuff. So they're really just like they're a crib sheet really for each of the beats based off what we've learned and stuff that we've picked up and from talking to different people. So, and we've got them for all 5 of the venues. That one for some reason stuck to the wall upside down. So really, I mean, we're tying every evening pretty much after practice. The reason being, we're getting a better feel for either the exact patterns and probably more importantly the exact size and weight rather than the pattern. You know, we did a lot of tying before we got here, but we're never really 100% happy with what you've got. So, you know, you always want to try and tweak it based off practice. It's just a funny thing, even at home, when I'm just pleasure fishing, I often tie, you know, I'll not say some of my best flies, but, you know, flies that I have the most faith in immediately after I've been fishing. And it's a funny little thing that I think sometimes carries over to especially when you're practicing new venues. You know, we've got all the standard stuff in our boxes, but it's always nice to have stuff there that you've tied specifically based off the practice that we've been doing.
we've had really good practice on the lakes. Felt like we put a good program together there. We went to the lakes first for the first couple of days, and so we had good lake fishing there, and went back to another one later in the week. River fishing, I would say, has been quite challenging. We had maybe one good river session. The rest of them, the numbers of fish were really low. It was a pretty classic setup where the organizers left very little practice water, and a lot of the practice water wasn't even on the rivers that we're fishing. So we're trying to glean some information, but the issue that happens with practice water a lot during these things is other countries tend to have more time off than us, so they can get here first. And by the time we get here, it's often quite beat up. And the practice water actually gets even harder, I think, than the competition venues do a lot of times, because the density of anglers that fish it for the amount of time they fish it is even higher. So the practice water fishing has been pretty heinous, frankly. But I don't know. I think we at least have a decent set of flies that we all believe are appropriate, and then it's just going to be about making good decisions. And I guess the good thing is that all the countries except for France are in the same boat, because nobody else really has any extra information about the rivers than we do. And everybody we've talked to so far had similarly difficult practices. So
these things are always a test for nerves. So we've practiced to the best level that we can. Some of the practice is probably not that representative, and we will have to wing some of it as we go. But all in all, you know, we've got on the water every day, we've fished every day, we've covered as much ground as we can. We've looked at the match water as best we can, because some of it's really hard to access. You know, we're as confident as we ever are going into one of these things. There's always that degree of uncertainty, but we've prepped well and we'll just see. Right lads, so that's the end of the unofficial practice really. It all sort of starts now. So from today onwards we're in like the official part of the week, and the first bit of that is there's the captain and the manager, I suppose, of sorts. It falls to me to give you your badges. Some of you have had them many times before, some of you not quite as many, and someone, it's the first one.
It's the first one.
So, big thing. Scott, congratulations mate, yet another one, well deserved.
Very good.
Well done.
Thank you all.
Well done, mate.
Thank you all. Good.
Tony,
Thanks,
well done mate, superb
Yeah,
this week
cheers.
as always,
Yeah.
really is.
It's going to set us up here,
Sean,
Cheers, buddy.
well done mate, well deserved,
Thank you.
great job. James,
Thank you.
superb as always mate, getting better every year.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, mate.
And then the big one, Chris,
Very much.
you get one of these as well though mate.
All
Well
right.
done, mate. Well
First
done.
ever World Cup,
Thank
mate.
you. Well
Really well deserved.
Cheers.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Yeah, superb mate, well done. We've had a good practice week, you know, and I know like, all these things, they're always a little bit daunting, you know, not so much for the likes of Scott and Tony, who's done a lot of them, but you lads who've not done quite as many, and for Chris, it is a big ask, first time out, there's a lot to process, a lot to do, but in all honesty, you know, it's been phenomenal this last week. Everyone's been on time, everyone's done everything that could have been reasonably asked of them. There's been not a bad word amongst us all. It's been a fantastic team. Everyone's worked for everybody else. And to be fair, Chris, you've fitted right in there. It's been
Cheers.
superb. So, well done, lads, and this is where it all gets serious now. We've just got to go out and fish for the best result we can get.
Ready? I'm so ready. 4:30. Not too early.
Day 1. Fly Fishing World Championships.
Do you remember how to drive stick now? This is a lot.
It's the first day, so I'm on the Ord River. Obviously, early morning start. Got to get to the coach now. You find the coach amongst the melee.
Boys.
Good luck.